Good afternoon. This is me, DK, sharing with you the best information about economics. Today's topic is government failure. Government tends to try their best to get their policy application correct. However, sometimes, despite having the best intentions, government could make the matter worse, or what we call deepening of market failure. Government failure may range from something to cases where intervention produces more new serious problems that had never existed, in which the solution to the problems could take ages to resolve. Over the last 50 or 60 years, Western governments have intervened to try to improve the social and economic life of their countries on a scale unimaginable to previous generations. Yet, these problems persist. Policies fail. When it comes to this topic, there are 6 possible causes which we should all know. First, political self-interest. Second, policy myopia. Third, regulatory capture. Fourth, government intervention and disincentive effects. Fifth, policy decisions based on imperfect information. And the last but definitely not the least, the law of unintended consequences. Let us go through each of the causes. Political self-interest. The pursuit of self-interest amongst politicians and civil servants can often lead to a misallocation of scarce resources. Example would be the decisions about the places for new roads, or even where to build bypasses. The key point here is that, when there is an influence exerted by special interest group, it can create an environment where government could spend and tax inappropriately. For example, government bringing forward major items of capital spending on infrastructural projects without doing a proper cost-benefit analysis to determine its social costs and benefits. Next, policy myopia. Basically, the government tends to look for short-term solutions, or what we call quick fixes, to difficult economic problems rather than making a careful analysis of the situation and a consideration over long-term effect. For our third point, regulatory capture. This is when the industries, under the control of a regulatory body, appear to operate in favor of the so-called vested interests of producers rather than consumers. An example of regulatory capture may arise in agriculture. Critics of the system of agriculture support known as the Common Agriculture Policy, or in short CAP, argue that it has operated too much in the interest of consumers, the environment and developing countries. The latter claim that they are being unfairly treated in world markets by the effects of import tariffs on food, and export subsidies to loss-making European farmers. Moving on to our fourth point, which is the disincentive effects. This happens when the government tries to reduce the income and wealth inequalities, causing a worsening of incentives and productivity in the economy. An example which free economists may argue against is the national minimum wage. It is believed that this could lead to real wage unemployment. In addition, these economists would also argue against raising the higher rates of income tax, as it deemed to have a negative effect on the incentives of wealth creators in the economy, and generally acts as a disincentive to work longer periods or take a better paid job. Now, let us talk about the last 2 points. Imperfect information. For this point, it is just basically about the lack of certain form of information which causes the judgment or the action taken to be unsuccessful. It is when government chooses to go ahead with project without having the full and proper information to analyze the pros and cons of the situation. Of course, this will damage the long-term consequences. Last point. Law of unintended consequences. Government policy will always lead to at least one reaction from either consumers or producers that are unanticipated. Economic agents do not always act in the way the textbook would predict. People tend to find ways to circumvent laws. For example, Singapore, though there has been law forbidding chewing gum, however, people tend to smuggle. All these are in unanticipated consequences. Having heard what I have said, now, to end off my video, I would like to provide you with the definition of government failure. Definition comes very handy when it comes to answering exam questions. It is always a good practice to define certain economics terms. As for this case, it is government failure, defining as the following. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Credit to tutor2u.com and Alex, who has been helping me with this narration.